GM cannot catch a break. Every time I look, they have something going on, and they kind of did this to themselves. See, there's this big push for EVs. By the way, you're probably hearing that little vacuum cleaner thing there, but yeah. They've been doing a big push on EVs, and I feel like they took their foot off the pedal when it came down to the combustion engines, and now they're paying the price for it. So let's go ahead and read this article. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What should GM do here? They need to get some guidance here, right? Because this could be a costly issue for them really soon. I found this article on GMauthority.com. A new federal investigation now targets a persistent problem with GM's popular 6.2-liter V8 engine. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has launched an engineering analysis after receiving hundreds of complaints of catastrophic engine failures in vehicles that the high-profile GM recall excluded. This probe places a glaring spotlight on a power plant that General Motors installs in the most profitable and popular full-size trucks and SUVs. This is definitely a bad look for General Motors. They continue to have issues with their power plants, their transmissions, and all of this is documented. It's not like people are picking on GM. It's just simply they're having a really bad go of it when it comes down to failures. Now be sure to subscribe to the channel. I have 2 LZOs that I recorded going down, both 2025s. Video probably coming next month. But regardless of that, GM really needs to figure out what's going on with their engineering department. Like, this is terrible. The agency's Office of Defects Investigation confirms it has received 1,157 reports of engine bearing failures. While GM previously acknowledged a supplier-related issue, issuing recall 25V-274 for certain 2021 and 24 models, the new action addresses a disturbing trend. A total of 173 failure reports involve vehicles built outside that specific recall window, including 2019 to 2020 model year Chevy Silverado 1500 and GMC Sierra 1500s. The continued high volume of reports from owners of these unaffected vehicles forced the agency's hand. ODI stated this situation presents a potential safety risk that warrants further investigation. And see, this is where it got really bad for GM. Now that there's potentially more model years of engines affected, because think of it this way, 2019 and 2020 trucks don't even have warranty anymore. And if they have to do a mandatory recall because of safety, all of these trucks that are affected could potentially get new engines. And so this can be a billion-dollar issue for General Motors. GM had blamed the earlier problem on multiple supplier manufacturing and quality issues leading to the recall. The closure of the initial preliminary evaluation, however, did not stop the reports of failed engines. The new engineering analysis will determine if the root cause extends beyond the previously identified supplier defects and whether GM must expand its repair campaign. This deeper investigation seeks to fully assess the safety implications for thousands of owners whose vehicles currently sit in a regulatory gray area, their expensive engines potentially facing the same fate as the recalled ones. For reference, the L87 recall from earlier this year addresses a critical defect in the V8 engine that can lead to sudden engine failure and loss of propulsion, presenting a serious safety risk. General Motors launched this action following a federal investigation ultimately recalling nearly 600,000 full-size trucks and SUVs from 21 to 2024 model years. The core of the problem lies in manufacturing defects within the L87 engine's connecting rod and crankshaft components. Issues such as sediment and oil passages and out-of-specification parts can cause these components to fail, often with little to no warning. This can result in a catastrophic engine seizure or even a connecting rod breaching the engine block, destroying the power plant and abruptly halting the vehicle. The remedy from GM involves a 2-part solution. Dealers will inspect vehicles and replace engines that don't pass. For vehicles not yet displaying failure symptoms, the fix includes changing to a higher viscosity oil, installing a new oil filter, and adding an updated oil cap to reflect the newly recommended viscosity. When you think about the automobile, it hasn't been out that long when you consider the horse and buggy. There was a time in history where people use horse and buggy, and as a matter of fact, if you go back to the beginning, that's what people use, horse and buggy. Now, when the automobile first came out, you probably had a lot of people who were like, I don't need an automobile. My horse and buggy is just fine. But as time went on, the automobile got better and better and better. Therefore, people who probably were not interested in the automobile began to become more interested because of how it advanced. Now, let's talk about EVs and internal combustion engines. So, most of you guys know where this is going. I truly believe that the EVs screwed the internal combustion engine. The manufacturers took their foot off the pedal. I've said this before in the past, and it's just the truth. The EV will make sense one day. It may even outlive the internal combustion engine and be what we all drive. But as of right now, the EV has not made its mark on history like the automobile did in the early 1900s. So how is it that internal combustion engines have gone backwards when they've always been really good? Now, obviously, 173 failures is not a lot. But what you have to understand is this engine's been out for a long time. And we can say, yeah, maybe during the pandemic time, okay, fine, maybe that was an issue. But the reality is there was a push with the Obama administration that created these stupid systems like cylinder deactivation and stop-start technology. And then through the last administration that was in office, obviously they had this big push for EVs, hence the tax credits. So there was a time when Trump took office where the manufacturers were saying require us to sell EVs. So what am I saying? I truly believe that internal combustion engines were set up for a time to start to fail, to give people a reason to step over to an EV. Now again, you don't have to agree with me, it's just my opinion. I could be dead wrong. But I truly believe with what we've seen in the past, what we saw in the last administration, what they're still continuing to do to diesel engines, or trying to do, I should say. There's now some pushback, thank God. But the reality is, this would not be happening if they just allowed EVs to do what they were supposed to do. Change minds. See, I truly believe the only reason why these internal combustion engines suck so bad is because they wanted people to want to buy EVs. The manufacturers asked Trump, require us to continue to push EVs so people buy them. And you have to understand that why is there a probe now with this L87 engine? I mean, I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying what I'm saying is fact, but I'm just speculating that maybe now this engine was set up to fail. And now that we don't have the big push for EVs, now there's a glaring light on GM now for this failure. And now they're going to pay big because they did it the wrong way. I truly believe that EVs will one day have their place, but they have to do it on their own. And so hopefully these issues with internal combustion engines go away and that they become more reliable, that we can see 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles out of these gasoline engines and 500,000 miles to 1,000,000 miles out of the diesels. But there's a requirement for that. And that requires them to make them reliable and stop pushing more restrictions to make them unreliable. So that's all I got. I feel bad for you, GM. I think that you should have stood behind your customers versus trying to implement these things that were never going to last long term. So it is what it is.